So 3 years ago today, I made an award-winning podcast inspired by an award-winning JJ McCall video inspired by the first of 5 award-winning Israeli general elections in a row, where he chose to join in the trend that everybody does at one point or another and speculate what would happen if the United States had more than 2 parties, particularly citing the Israeli system. The fact that I made a response to JJ specifically should give you an indication that I did not 100% agree with what he said. Some things got right, others not so much. But for a couple of reasons, that episode is outdated. For one, it's a podcast, and before the time where podcasts were really that good for me. But secondly, it's because politics has actually shifted quite a bit since that podcast was released. So for the 3rd year anniversary of this video coming out, I decided to basically take the concept, dust it off, look over both of the videos again, see what he got wrong, see what I got wrong, and take the changes in US politics from then to now, and make a new and improved version of that video. I swear this has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I'm running out of ideas. No. Alright, so first on the agenda, why don't we just go over JJ's video? Like I said, he got some things right, but when he makes an extremely glaring error, I just can't overlook it. And he not only made 1, he made 2 or 3. We'll start with the 2 ones that are noticeable in the thumbnail. A Latino party and a Catholic party would not exist. We'll start off with the Latino party, as I think that one just has too many holes to make any sense. Latinos are too politically diverse to form a coherent political party, and that's because Latinos are not like a monolithic group of voters. We are taking people with vastly different cultural and ethnic backgrounds and lumping them together as one. When a more direct analysis in each of these different backgrounds, you will see why these groups cannot coalesce into one political party. A lot of Latino voters have had at least one of their family members prior to them, parents, grandparents, etc., immigrate to the United States. But what did they immigrate from? And that leads to vastly different political outlooks. A person who immigrated from Cuba has vastly different reasons to coming here than someone who immigrated from Mexico. And that in turn leads to them to have vastly different political outlooks. You literally need not look far to see why a central Latin American party can't work when you look at the United States Congress, considering we have 2 Hispanic caucuses, one for Republican Latinos and one for Democratic Latinos, because these 2 groups cannot be any more different from each other. And the issues that JJ says would unite Latinos, labor rights, immigration, and rights for Spanish speakers, just don't. One prominent congressional Latina has a very close relationship with labor. One prominent Senate Latino has a mass hatred for organized labor. That same congressional Latina has advocated for the abolition of ICE, and many of our Democratic colleagues are similar in regards to having a more safe and reasonable immigration policy. Meanwhile, one prominent congressional Latino in 2016 ran for president and said that his immigration policies would be so strict that his parents would not have even been allowed to come to the United States. And that third issue just does not exist. We don't live in Canada. We don't have language-based issues. His reasoning makes even less sense when you realize that his original intention for that list was that he wanted to make the Latino party an explicitly illegal immigrant party. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz would absolutely love to join the illegal immigrant party. It's probably unintentional, but all of this stuff combined comes off really racist. Not helped by the fact that JJ's definition of American culture is the culture of the United States and Canada. I guess the 33 other countries in the Americas just don't count, apparently. And as JJ points out for the latter party,
such a party sort of teetering on the brink of irrelevancy, as more and more conservative Catholics would just vote for the evangelical party if they cared a lot about the abortion issue, and one of the other parties if they didn't.
So then why would they exist at all? Like, in your section of your video where you're explaining why, oh, this party would exist because X, Y, and Z, you took your time to explain why this party probably wouldn't exist. But don't think that this is going to exclusively be a JJ screwed up part. I'm going to talk about one thing that I really don't know how to describe it, because in a way I was sort of right and wrong about something. You see, in my original video, I predicted that under this system, Andrew Yang would be able to start his own political party, and lo and behold, now Andrew Yang has started his own political party. But I made a point to not include this party. Why? Simply put, when I first made the original video, it was really unclear what the Yang Gang was going to be. Like, at that point, it was still this weird amalgam of, like, former Trump supporters, former Bernie supporters, former Ron Paul types, libertarian tech bros. Like, it was just this amalgam of, like, this vaguely populist thing that I really had no clue what it was going to be politically. But now the Yang Gang has essentially lost any uniqueness that they had, and every single faction within it at the time would probably just gravitate towards one of the other parties that I will explain in a bit. But all the flaws in our analyses can be explained away with one simple thing. With the idea of having 10 parties, we needed slots to fill. And since JJ is a Canadian, his understanding of the politics of the USA are a bit flawed. And to a degree, you could also say that me and him have biases and we represented them in the videos. Now that we've got all that out of the way, let's talk about what the actual 10 parties of the US would be. Now, the first thing we're going to say is something that everybody agrees upon with their analysis. The Democrats and the Republicans would still be there, but they would be a lot more bland. As everybody has pointed out, even to the levels of the US Congress, if we had a multi-party system, all of the ideological factions between the two major parties would have no need to form these massive coalitions with each other and would just branch off to form their own parties. But with that, we have to acknowledge that, at the very least, the centrist factions of both major parties would be their own parties. But just for the sake of brevity, we'll just call them the Democrats and the Republicans. You know, they represent like the neoliberal, neoconservative Washington consensus. There really isn't that much difference between the two, aside from maybe like the Democrats are a little bit more harsh on like corporations and might be more okay with using soft power in regards to foreign interventions, as opposed to the Republicans being a bit more like hawkish. But yeah, think of these guys as like the political establishment, I guess. Now, one of the biggest flaws with JJ's analysis, aside from the two that I listed before, was the fact that he didn't include the Libertarian Party. To an extent, I can see why he didn't include it, because Canada's Libertarian Party is incredibly weak, but the United States Libertarian Party has consistently been the third choice for Americans for a while now. Now, you could argue it's not necessarily for their ideology, it's literally just because they are the largest third party, so they're usually the third party listed highest on the ballot. But this is the kind of party that I could see thriving under a multi-party United States. Now, one of the biggest things I wondered was, what type of a Libertarian Party would this be? Because I didn't see them being like the Canadian Libertarian Party, or like the current Libertarian Party, the Mises Caucus, but I also don't see them as being a Gary Johnson type Libertarian Party, because at that point, what would be the functional difference between them and the Democrats? I guess you could say, war. But I honestly think someone like a Ron Paul type, you know, like a conservative libertarian, or maybe like a Justin Amash type, those would probably be the figureheads of this Libertarian Party. Maybe the only difference would be that this party might be pro-abortion, but those two aren't. Alright, the next major ideological party would be a socialist party. Now, I debated whether or not this would be just a generic progressive party, or if this would be like an actual socialist party. But I decided to make it a full-on socialist party, as this system would probably make socialism less radical in the United States. These guys would be like very popular in, say, like union towns or certain areas where socialism just has been really prevalent in the United States. To get a little fan-fiction-y, I have this weird idea in my head that this would have been like a coalition between Robert La Follette, William Jennings Bryan, and Eugene Debs, and that maybe this would have been the vehicle that La Follette ran his presidential bid on, and it's spearheaded into like a large socialist movement today. One question might be, how radical is this socialist party? Because you get some parties that call themselves socialist parties, but they really are basically just social democratic parties. And then you have to get into the debate about like what's functionally the difference between the two. The closest answer I can give is that maybe it would be like a multi-tenancy group. And maybe you'd get like the occasional controversy with like, oh, this person praised X socialist dictator. The next party is also a very common one, the Apostle Party. This is where the evangelical right goes. This is a party that probably would have started around like the Fourth Great Awakening and the rise of like Billy Graham. Like instead of those guys taking over the Republican Party, they just decide to start their own political party. We can already see them now. They're like, oh, they're super hardline on abortion, gay and trans rights, trying to break down the separation of church and state, probably extremely Zionist, maybe like more okay with wars against countries that are like anti-Christian. I could see them having like slight hints of Christian democracy in there. Maybe they don't support the death penalty anymore. But I don't necessarily think that that would be the dominant faction within the party. I know a lot of you might be wondering, would it be every single version of Christianity, or would it just be one? Now, that's where it gets tricky. You see, because with the Fourth Great Awakening, that's sort of when the term Christianity became a thing. Like, before then, you were like, oh no, I'm a Catholic, or I'm a Protestant, or I'm a Mormon. But then after that, you sort of started seeing people be a bit more lenient in regards to different factions of Christianity. And I could see this party sort of being a vehicle for that. Like maybe specific areas of the country espouse specific sections of Christianity. Like in Utah, this party would probably be incredibly Mormon. Or in the South, this party would be incredibly Baptist. But overall, the party is just Christian. Another question you may ask is, would this mean that other religious political parties could exist in this world? Maybe, but I don't think they have as much strength as Christianity. And even if they all split off to become their own little Christian sects, I don't think they'd be that strong unless they all united under the Apostle Party. The next one is the Niagara Party, named after the Niagara movement of W.E.B. Du Bois. As you can guess, this is the African American Party. Reason why this one stays and the Latino Party doesn't is because African Americans are a lot more of a solid voting bloc electorally. Black conservatives, well obviously there, are more of an outlier politically. Now even though this is named after the Niagara movement of W.E.B. Du Bois, I don't necessarily think that this would be formed by him. Maybe it would be, but I see this more as being started during the 60s during the rise of the Black Power movement. Which begs one question: how left-wing is this party going to be? As while African Americans usually have left-of-center views, that can range very drastically. And even the most prominent vehicle for African American politics today, the Congressional Black Caucus, has very noticeable differences between the founders of the caucus and the current members of the caucus. And I actually think that this might actually be the perfect route for them. Like maybe the party was founded and it was extremely radical, like basically borderline Black Panthers. But then as time goes on, they moderate themselves a bit, the radicals grow up and transition into more traditional political figures. Or maybe it's a continual fight between like the youth radical faction and the older members of the party that are like, look, radicalism is over, it's time to get serious. Either way, I think it fits. To give complete and utter whiplash, we have the alt-right party, a hardline, borderline fascist party. Now the biggest thing is, you can't really figure out a time period to where you could place when this party forms, because the United States has had vastly different time periods where far-right radical movements become prevalent. Is this a neo-Nazi party that forms in the immediate aftermath of World War II? Is this just a political vehicle for the KKK that transitions into a hard-right party? Was this party formed by the far-right sentiment that grew after Gamergate and QAnon? Really? You can place it anywhere like historically, and it kind of fits. But I do see it like every single time like this new far-right movement comes, it essentially rebrands itself. I even made mock-ups of the logo that I use for this party for both Pepe the Frog and QAnon, but I figured that a more generic far-right looking like thing fits. Fun fact though, the bird that is used in this logo comes from a place that I doubt any of you will be able to figure out. Like seriously, if I told you where this logo came from, you would not believe me. Next, we have the United States Green Party. And yes, the fact that I am not using a template of the current United States Green Party is actually an indication. I see this Green Party sort of forming around the same time as other Green Parties formed around the world, late 70s, early 80s, you know, basically around the time when the modern day environmentalist movement is created. And this Green Party is vastly different from the Green Party that exists currently. As Green Parties around the world are not created equal, we have some that are extremely far left, like the United States Green Party, and ones like in Mexico that are pretty right-wing, but a majority of them are sort of like vaguely left of center that are mostly focused on environmentalism. Usually because those countries already have prevalent socialist parties, and since this United States has a prevalent socialist party, there is no need for this Green Party to be the vehicle of socialists. So this one is sort of just like that, a generically left-of-center political party mostly focused on environmentalism. Ironically, I think Al Gore probably would have been a prominent leader within this party. Although to a degree, I can see it being somewhat similar to the Canadian Green Party, while still broadly being pro-environmentalist. It really becomes a vehicle for people who are rejected from basically every single left-of-center party. The next party, the Whig Party, I choose this party to represent basically the trendy centrist party. You know, like every so often we get a party in literally any country really that says, hey, the mainstream politics is too far to the right or too far to the left. We need to come to the center and work together. Even if that country already has a prominent centrist party, this still pops up. And for the United States specifically, we have had quite a number of parties like that. So just to make it look cool, I decided to use the modern Whig Party as a template. But for anybody who wants to put it on a timeline, let's just say this was a party formed in the 90s and this is an XP for the Reform Party. Or you could say it was formed now with Andrew Yang or Howard Schultz or whatever. And now we have reached the last party, one that I think is very interesting and a little bit unique. It is the Populist Party. A party whose ideology is populism, or, to make it a little bit more simple, Christian democracy, but to simplify it again, socially conservative and economically left-wing. Yes, to a degree another centrist party, but centrist in a different manner. I don't know why I didn't include it in the last list, but really, just taking a look at it objectively, this party has enough momentum that it could be viable. A 2016 election exit poll showed that it was the second largest voting bloc in the election. I chose to model it after the farmer, labor, or populist parties of yesteryear. I can't even really think of any lore for this, because this party has been a love child for minor party idealists for a long time, so you could really put it anywhere. Especially with the rise of the internet, I literally believe that if this party existed, a lot of the prominent left-wing creators on the internet would not even be affiliated with the left, they'd be part of this party. So yeah, those are the 10 parties that I believe would be prevalent in the United States, should a multi-party system ever be prominent. Here's a political compass test vaguely going through what they would stand for politically. And in a hypothetical scenario where we have this system but still an electoral college, here's how well they do in all these states. I'd go on and on, but then it would essentially just be a fan fiction, and we don't really need to know about that. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and click the bell to notify when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.